Yellowstone supervolcano eruption. What happens next? The Yellowstone supervolcano is one of the most powerful engines of destruction on the planet. Its eruptions have been some of the largest in Earth's history, and at some point, geologists agree that it will blow again. But what happens next after this supervolcano erupts? What kind of damage would the explosion cause to the local area, the surrounding states, and possibly even the entire world? Here is the Yellowstone supervolcano, the aftermath. What happens next? Yellowstone National Park sits atop the world's largest active supervolcano. It has already had 3 super eruptions in its lifetime. The oldest was 2.1 million years ago. The next 2 were 500,000 years apart, occurring 1.3 million years ago and 640,000 years ago. Those 3 eruptions helped form the massive caldera that we can see today. However, there have also been smaller eruptions throughout its history. In fact, there was a small eruption just last year, and all signs point towards more activity on the horizon. As for what exactly caused these super eruptions, no one really knows. The general consensus amongst scientists is that it's due to a hotspot that lies far below the North American tectonic plate. This hotspot seems to be stationary while the plate moves over it, creating volcanoes as it goes. Eventually, the plate will move off of the hotspot, and the Yellowstone supervolcano will go dormant once again. But until then, we are in for some serious heat. So what would happen if this volcano erupted again? Well, first things first, the immediate area would be destroyed. It wouldn't matter if the eruption was big or small. Even the smallest eruption would obliterate Yellowstone National Park and the surrounding towns. In the case of a larger eruption, the magma chamber could collapse, causing a huge depression in the ground. Hot magma would shoot up through the newly formed hole and incinerate everything around it. Pyroclastic flows would race down the mountain at speeds of up to 100 miles per hour. These fast-moving avalanches of hot rock and ash would consume anything in their path. Some of them could travel up to 100 miles from the source before finally coming to a stop. Now let's take a look at what happens after the immediate aftermath. First, we'll discuss the effects felt within the United States. Ash and debris from the explosion would quickly cover much of the western part of the country. All of the surrounding states would experience darkness for several days, as a thick layer of ash blocked out the sun. Roads and infrastructure would quickly become unusable, especially in the northwestern states. It would be difficult to even venture outside, as the air quality would be extremely poor. Many people would need to stay indoors for weeks while the ash settled. Of course, once the immediate danger had passed, emergency services would begin assessing the damage. They would soon discover that transportation routes were completely blocked by ash and debris. No one would be able to get in or out of the affected zone. Planes couldn't fly because airports were shut down. Even if they could fly, they wouldn't be able to land. Within just a few days, the entire region would descend into chaos. Hospitals would run out of supplies, grocery stores would be emptied, and fuel pumps would run dry. People would be forced to stay inside their homes, as the threat of another eruption loomed over them. Some would flee to other states. But soon, those states would experience the same thing: ash. At some point, the US government would need to step in. They would most likely declare martial law in order to maintain order. Only essential workers would be allowed to go outside. Food and water would need to be delivered to certain areas. A cloud of ash covered the entire country. Then the temperature would start to drop. Hot steam from the volcano would begin to trap moisture in the air, blocking out the sun and cooling the planet. It wouldn't be long before the country descended into a new ice age. If the eruption was large enough, it would block out the sun for months or even years. Crops would fail, and famine would strike the nation. Many people would freeze to death during the harsh winter. Others would die from starvation. There is a reason why the government keeps food and water supplies in underground silos. Just in case something like this were to happen, scientists estimate that the explosive force of the next Yellowstone eruption will be about 1,000 times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And now let's take a look at what happens next. On a global scale, most countries would feel the effects of the eruption in one way or another. The air and water would become polluted with volcanic debris. Global temperatures would plummet and crops would fail. Volcanic ash would travel around the world, coating everything in a layer of dust. Since the eruption would happen so suddenly, most countries wouldn't be prepared for it. Panic would ensue as people struggled to adapt to the harsh new environment. Some countries would offer aid, but with their own crops failing, they wouldn't be able to help for long. Planes would eventually be able to fly again, but no one would dare leave their homes. After all, where would they even go? Every country on Earth would be experiencing the same thing. By this point, the entire world would feel like a desolate wasteland. Cities would be abandoned as people fled to the countryside in search of food and water. The lucky ones would find fertile land and start small farms. The less fortunate would starve to death. Countries would collapse and society would crumble. This would lead to mass migrations of people. Some would try to flee to other planets. Unfortunately, even if they made it off Earth, they wouldn't survive for long. There isn't any oxygen on Mars, and even if they somehow terraformed the planet, they wouldn't have enough supplies to sustain themselves. This is why scientists are looking at other options. Some are suggesting that they try to colonize the Moon instead. After all, it's closer to Earth and has more natural resources. Others believe that they should focus on asteroids instead. Asteroids seem to be rich with metals and minerals that could be used to rebuild society. There are even rumors that there are entire cities hidden inside of asteroids. They may be our best chance of survival. At this point, the world would be in desperate need of resources. Most of the world's oil would be unusable since refineries would be destroyed. Plus, there wouldn't be anyone to operate them. Countries would need to find a new energy source to keep their populations alive. Some would turn back to coal, but that would pollute the air and water even more. Others would try to harness the power of the wind or the sun. These are clean forms of energy, but they aren't very efficient. Unfortunately, the world would never recover from the eruption. Even if they did manage to find a new energy source, it wouldn't be enough. The amount of ash and debris in the atmosphere would eventually block out the sun entirely. Without light, the planet would be plunged into darkness forever. Plants would die, animals would migrate or become extinct. Humans would struggle to adapt to the new environment. Some believe that humans would develop night vision and become nocturnal. Others believe that we would evolve wings in order to seek out the sun. Whatever happens, it's safe to say that the world would never be the same. It might be helpful to know when the next Yellowstone eruption will occur. Scientists don't know for sure, but they have come up with some estimates. According to the USGS, there is a 14% chance of an eruption within the next 30 years, so it may not happen anytime soon. However, it's impossible to predict when exactly it will occur. It could happen tomorrow or in 100 years. Scientists are keeping a close eye on the situation and will do everything they can to warn us if it does start to happen. However, it's unlikely that they will be able to stop it. The best-case scenario would be if it's a small eruption that doesn't cause too much damage. In this scenario, it would still be very dangerous, but it would allow scientists to study the volcano and try to better understand it. Unfortunately, it's more likely that the next eruption will be much larger. In this scenario, the damage would be catastrophic. Not only would the immediate area be destroyed, but the entire country would be plunged into darkness for weeks. Planes would be grounded and food shortages would occur. It would be a true test of human resilience. If it was big enough, the entire world would suffer. Volcanic ash would block out the sun, causing temperatures to plummet and crops to fail. Countries would collapse, and society as we know it would cease to exist. The lucky ones would find fertile land and start small farms. The less fortunate would starve to death. But what happens next after that? Some would flee to other planets, but unfortunately they wouldn't survive for long. There isn't any oxygen on Mars, and even if they terraformed the planet, they wouldn't have enough supplies to sustain themselves. This is why scientists are looking at other options. Some are suggesting that they try to colonize the Moon instead. After all, it's closer to Earth and has more natural resources. Others believe that they should focus on asteroids instead. Asteroids seem to be rich with metals and minerals that could be used to rebuild society. There are even rumors that there are entire cities hidden inside of asteroids. They may be our best chance of survival. At some point, the world would need to find a new energy source to keep their populations alive. Some would turn back to coal, but that would pollute the air and water even more. Others would try to harness the power of the wind or the sun. Unfortunately, the world would never recover from the eruption. Even if they did manage to find a new energy source, it wouldn't be enough. The amount of ash and debris in the atmosphere would eventually block out the sun entirely. Plants would die, animals would migrate or become extinct. Humans would struggle to adapt to the new environment. Some believe that humans would develop night vision and become nocturnal. Others believe that we would evolve wings in order to seek out the sun. Whatever happens, it's safe to say that the world would never be the same. Yellowstone supervolcano, one of the most feared natural disasters on Earth. When it erupts again, the world will never be the same. Hopefully, it will be thousands of years from now. Now watch. Doomsday, what actually happens? Or check out life after nuclear war, what would actually happen?